This is inside one of the hospitals that they're now returning to in Gaza. Obviously, this is one of these things where it's like we should celebrate that bombs, for the most part, are not falling. And I think those who simply act like it doesn't matter at all or kind of have their head up their ass. And if you ask what I've seen of the videos of Gazans, a lot of them are saying it matters a lot. So let's not do that. But let's also realize that Israel tends to not stick to ceasefires and this thing is not over, etc. I want to read some from Mondo Weiss, their analysis. The 3 women held by resistance groups in Gaza since October 7th have been released, and dozens of Palestinian prisoners have been released from Israeli prisons. And of course, the Israelis are called hostages while the Palestinians are called prisoners, just because that's the propaganda. The prisoners that were released from Israeli jails include children and many who have been held in administrative detention, which means zero legal proceedings or charges or anything. Netanyahu claimed victory when it's plainly obvious he failed in his stated goal to destroy the resistance in Gaza. The far right in Israel claims they have been assured this first phase of the ceasefire agreement is temporary and a return to all-out war is imminent. That some of them have quit because they were so furious over the idea of not bombing children.
So insane that to be like, don't worry, guys, don't worry. Anytime now, we'll bring back the carnage and death.
Yeah. The children will keep dying very soon. Don't worry. And how they say that just said that Netanyahu failed in his stated goal to get rid of Hamas. Even if you quote unquote support Israel and you love genocide and everything else, you're not actually stopping Hamas. For every bomb that falls, you're creating about 30 new Hamas, some militants, some who are non-militants, whatever, but people who support the cause if their family was just killed. I mean, it's militarily, it doesn't even make sense. And the other thing I feel like needs to be mentioned is this, as I need to keep repeating, Trump is a horrific, narcissistic piece of human garbage, yet he did succeed in this ceasefire in like a day. Like, wasn't even in office yet, and he showed more willingness to push Netanyahu than Biden ever did.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm like, are the Democrats like fetishists? Like, do they get off on humiliation? Like, it's just so embarrassing and pathetic how easily Trump can rack up wins on the Democrats.
Yeah, in like not even in office, he forced the ceasefire. Now, we've talked before and we'll be talking more about how horrific he is on Israel. Totally supports the apartheid state and really supports this genocide. But he knows what looks good, what gives him power, what shows he has power. So even if he is going to give Israel everything they want. In fact, in the ceasefire deal, it says that if Israel breaks the ceasefire, Trump will support them. So it basically says, go ahead and break the ceasefire. But he still knows what demonstrates his power, and it demonstrated his power. It also, overturning the TikTok ban before he's even in office. Mm-hmm. Basically, TikTok reversed its course, which, people may laugh at, but you got 100 million Americans who use it and like it. So it's like,
yeah, I wasn't laughing. I was on my knees crying tears of joy, praising Trump. Something to laugh at. TikTok is a serious matter, Lee.
Because you've got a solid TikTok presence.
I don't give a shit about my following. I like scrolling on TikTok.
See, here's the thing. You need to do like me and get banned within a month of using TikTok. Get banned with no right to appeal and no reason. And then you don't have to worry about it. And here is another important point, whereas people are talking about Gazans going home. Many of them are trying to go to where their homes once stood. This is from a great Gazan journalist, Matasem Adalul, which I will pronounce wrong like I do most things. But this is a map showing that like almost all the 92% of homes are damaged or destroyed. This is a destroyed number, not damaged. Destroyed. 70% North Gaza, 74% Gaza City, 50% in Deir el-Balah, 55% in Khan Yunis, 48% in Rafah. The level of devastation is crazy, and people are trying to go back to where their homes were, but most of them are not there.
Yeah.
And to continue from Mondo Weiss, Trump, who is less than 24 hours from returning to the White House, forced this deal when Biden could not. They mentioned that Biden, in a fever dream, tried to take credit. The agreement signed, because Biden's pointing out that the agreement signed was almost identical to the one that he put forward back in August or something. Yeah, there's a reason Israel didn't give a and do anything about it back in August because you showed no willingness to stop them at all. I imagine, I don't know what happened in the back rooms, but I imagine Trump said something like, we're not going to send you missiles unless you do this for a few days. Mm-hmm. That's probably what it was.
Yeah. It's like at least Trump will at least demonstrate some sort of American self-interest, whereas the Democrats, like, it was truly beyond, if you can set aside the human aspect of it, of how horrifying it is, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, we get nothing out of this. And with Trump, at least there's some self-interest there. You know, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, Trump is horrific on Israel and Gaza. He also said, or maybe he already did it, or said he was going to do it, take the sanctions off the quote-unquote settlers, land thieves, which was the only thing that the U.S. has done, quote-unquote, to Israel during this entire genocide, was to put some sanctions on land thieves.
On like 30 dudes.
Yeah, exactly, on like 30 people that stole Palestinian land. And Trump says he's going to overturn that, which, you know, it can't be stressed enough. He's terrible on Israel Gaza, but he understands power. He understands perception, and this showed power and perception. This is the first batch of female Israeli captives being released, and many are making the point, compare the way they look to how your average Palestinian captive looks after being released by Israel. There they are. So that's the three women, and people are comparing the photos of how they look. Fairly healthy, smiling. I mean, they've been in a war zone, for a genocide zone, for a year and 2 months or something. But still, compared to your average captive that has been tortured by Israel, there's kind of no comparison. They look far more healthy than Israel's captives, most of the ones they're releasing. This is one of the hostages that Israel's been holding. Palestinian leader, politician Khalida Jarrar, has been released from Israel. A lot of people excited to see some of these people free for the first time, and, you know, needs to be repeated again and again and again. Israel had 5,000 hostages before October 7th. Before it even began, Israel held 5,000 people, most of whom had never had a trial or charges. But even the ones who had a trial or charges literally saw a judge, an Israeli judge, for 60 seconds often, 60 to 90 seconds, where they quote unquote, made their case. Yeah, because in that 60 seconds, you can make a real case for why you're being illegally detained. Here's that same reporter that I mentioned earlier, Matassim al-Dalal, talking about going back to his house. He says, I tried to go back to my house and found a pile of rubble. So This is the video of his return home. And you know, a lot of things can be true. We can hope this holds. We can hope Israel stops, sticks to this ceasefire, even though...
I don't know if you saw, Lee, because this literally was like minutes before, and we'll have to wait to see how it unfolds. But there was Eye on Palestine, which is pretty trustworthy generally on the ground, posted a video of apparently an Israeli sniper shooting a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, because one thing I was about to show is that there's already been reports that Israel had left booby-trapped food packages in northern Gaza, which have been exploding when civilians open them. Wow. So, which is a war crime to begin with, but this is also during a ceasefire. It's basically bombing the civilian population. Just because it's left in a booby trap doesn't really make any difference in terms of the impact. So, in many ways, they're still bombing people. But there's a big difference between the amount of carnage that's going on right now versus pre-ceasefire.